I'm Iris Tao in for Steve Lance. Unleashing America's coal industry. That's what President Trump is vowing to do as he signs new executive orders today to roll back the red tape and bolster America's coal plants. This while holding strong to new tariffs. China now faces a 104% tariff starting at midnight tonight. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
Pound for pound, coal is the single most reliable, durable, secure, and powerful form of energy there is on Earth today. Most importantly, we have more of it here in America than anywhere else.
President Trump signs a few executive orders that aim to boost America's coal industry. The orders expedite permits on new coal plants and end what Trump calls a long-time government bias against coal.
For too long, coal has been a dirty word that most are afraid to speak about. Most of those that would speak negatively about coal do so from an uneducated standpoint.
Too many government leaders have pushed policies that have made our electric grid significantly less reliable and our energy too expensive.
Trump said that he'll also work to protect investments in coal mining so that future lawmakers and presidents will be unable to close them. One of his executive orders also directs the Justice Department to crack down on state policies that allegedly discriminate against coal mining. Demand for power is surging as data centers for AI, electric cars, and cryptocurrencies require increasing amounts of energy. Trump says that to meet these needs, the U.S. needs at least double of its current amount of energy. Now, this comes as the Trump administration says that nearly 70 countries have reached out to Washington to negotiate on tariffs. America's new tariffs on nearly every country around the world kicked in just last week, and tariffs on China are set to increase to 104% on Wednesday. That's if the Chinese Communist Party doesn't roll back its retaliatory tariffs on the U.S.
China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight. But the president believes that she and China want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get that started.
Dozens of other countries also face increased tariffs on Wednesday. They're part of a campaign promise from President Trump to increase domestic manufacturing and level the playing field on trade. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Another legal win for the Trump White House. The Supreme Court today siding with the Trump administration for now on the several thousand probationary federal employees that is trying to fire. Today, the court allowed the administration to keep the workers off the payroll while lower courts decide whether the downsizing efforts are legal. The High Court's decision blocks a ruling from a lower court judge that required the government to reinstate more than 16,000 probationary workers. Meanwhile, this is not the final word on whether the employees will be able to keep their jobs, but it will have a significant impact on them and the agencies they work for. Two liberal justices, Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, publicly dissented. And U.S. District Court Judge James Boasberg canceled an afternoon hearing today after the Supreme Court ruled yesterday that the Trump administration could resume carrying out deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. Boasberg was set to consider extending the temporary restraining order he issued to block those deportations last month. He had also suggested that he was considering whether or not to hold the administration in contempt for failing to provide more information about the deportation of over 200 alleged Venezuelan gang members. Meanwhile, the ACLU filed a new lawsuit in New York today on behalf of 2 Venezuelan immigrants detained in a New York facility. This comes after the Supreme Court ruled that all future claims must be brought in the state where detainees are held. The 2 Venezuelans were previously part of the D.C. lawsuit, and according to the ACLU, Homeland Security transferred them to New York last week. The U.S. stock market rebounding this morning, only to fall again after a turbulent 3 days of trading. This comes after the White House confirmed that President Trump's tariffs on China will go up to 104% at midnight tonight. And joining me now to discuss these latest developments is Republican Congressman from Georgia, Rick McCormick. Congressman Rick McCormick, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you today.
So first, the budget plan just passed the Senate, and President Trump has been praising it, saying on Truth Social that it has all of the elements we need to secure the border, enact historic spending cuts, and make tax cuts permanent. And tell us more about it. How do you think it's going to go in the House, especially given the gap between the Senate's $4 billion in cuts over 10 years versus the House's plan, which is pushing for $1.5 trillion?
Yeah, obviously that's concerning to a lot of members in Congress. We had a robust conference call today where there was a lot of debate over what we should do to approach this. Some people think that this is just to get us to the table where we can actually have a simple majority in the Senate to actually make the revisions necessary based on the president's budget, way he brings the rescissions, and how we approve the ultimate bill. That's where the real cuts will be made. Other people think we need amendments now to get those numbers closer to, so that we're not talking about a roof, we're talking about a floor. We're talking about where we're going to actually draw a line in the sand as to what things need to be done in this bill. We all agree that we need to lock in the tax cuts, which really aren't tax cuts. They're maintaining the status quo that the Biden administration greatly benefited from, that President Trump passed at the end of his presidency in the first term. We need to make sure those things are locked in. We're going to make sure that happens. We're going to make sure that the border is secured properly. We're going to make sure the military is funded correctly, especially the standards right now into the world's tumultuous future. But what we don't agree on is the overall spending items. We're in trouble. We're approaching $37 trillion in debt. We have less than $5 trillion in revenue per year. We're paying $1 trillion in debt, just interest payment per year. If we don't do something dramatic, we will get downgraded again as a currency, and we will cease to be the world's currency standard. That would be extremely expensive to us, not only in interest payments, but also the future of whatever we invest in America. As we approach 30% of our revenue being spent on interest payments, that's a really bad indicator of the future of America. So we need to do something now. We need to get rid of a lot of fraudulent spending, wasteful spending. We need to get people used to working again and not just sitting at home. We need to make sure that all hands are on board when it comes to the future of America.
And Congressman, on tariffs, given your service on the House Armed Services Committee, how do you view the impact of President Trump's new tariffs on national security of our country? And do you think they're effectively strengthening the U.S. manufacturing, especially when it comes to critical defense components like steel and tech components? Or are you concerned that they might strain our relationships with some of our allies who are key to our military strategy?
Well, I'm not big on commodity tariffs because there's no way to negotiate that. You know, it's either a commodity or it's not. And if you do a steel tariff, for example, if you have a 25% tariff, that means you're going to force American manufacturers to buy more expensive steel. But when it comes to tariffs overall and its negotiation power with foreign entities, it's been extremely effective so far. We'll see how it goes with China in the long term. But right now you have the entire EU offering 0 for 0 tariffs. That's an incredible leveraging point. That's going to help all America's industries to have access to the European market. It's going to make sure that we're treated fairly when we purchase products. It's actually going to deflate instead of inflate the cost of goods when it comes to foreign products that we purchase all the time. Same thing goes for Japan, India, Cambodia, Vietnam, Israel, all offering 0 tariffs. You've had in all over 50 countries come to President Trump and try to negotiate. That is an excellent leverage point for us as the strongest economy in the world to step off from. That's going to really strengthen our position in the world, our ability to have industry and at the same time to purchase at a lower price. That's a win-win-win. Hopefully it doesn't backfire on us when it comes to China and other countries that maybe try to flex on us, but we still are the big boy when it comes to world markets.
And to your point here, while we're seeing countries like Japan, India, even the EU coming to the U.S. to now trying to negotiate, China has fired back with its own 34% tariffs on U.S. goods. And as it's not backing down, as President Trump has called on them to do so, the U.S. will now enact another 50% of additional tariffs on top of course, what we have seen with the reciprocal tariffs announced last week now on China. Where do you think things will go next when it comes to U.S. and China trade? Are we going to be in a significant trade war with China now?
Oh, we're already in a trade war. If you think about how we've been treated unfairly for years, for decades, China has had a much higher tariff on us than vice versa. We have a bigger market than them. We are more valuable to them than they are to us. Of course, they have a lot of resources we need, components. They've been very strategic in their collecting of assets, whether it be lithium, cobalt, rare earth minerals. But we're going to fix that in the near future, I think. And I think they're going to be in a bad position if they don't come to the table with something that's fair. We're not asking for something unfair. We're asking for them to do the same thing to us that we're doing to them, which is a 0 tariff. That's free trade. That's what's always worked. To be treated unfairly as a protectionist market. They've been doing this in the World Trade Organization. They've been supplementing their businesses by government manipulation. It's put a lot of people out of business. It's not fair trade. They've been taken to court over 20 times and lost almost every single legal battle because they cheat on the World Trade Organization. It's about time that they be held accountable.
We have heard administrations on both sides, past administrations on both sides of the aisle, complaining that China's unfair trade practices have hurt American manufacturers and even consumers and regular households. But when it comes to the actual impact of the new tariffs, though, for example, your district in Georgia includes some suburban Atlanta with a strong presence of tech, healthcare, and small business sectors. How do you think tariffs are expected to impact local employers and consumers in your district? And are you hearing some specific concerns from your constituents?
Luckily, all the concerns I've had have already been addressed. The people who have come to the table are from Europe and Vietnam. Most of my constituents were smart enough to shift away from China and towards Vietnam, Cambodia, other countries that offer similar products. I think that will only accelerate in the near future. If China continues to escalate this, India has the production capacity that China has. They have the manpower, they have the resource, they have the ability to obtain those things. And I think over the long haul, China will be shooting itself in the foot if they continue these unfair trade practices. So we're really in the driver's seat on this. They will be isolated, not us.
And before I let you go here, we have seen a bipartisan bill being brought up by Senators Grassley and Cantwell seeking to require congressional approval for new tariffs within 60 days. Do you support that? Should Congress reassert its constitutional right that it says over trade here?
I've been very vocal about this from the beginning. I want to see Congress take its equal footing with the president and the Senate. That's the way it's supposed to be. Our Constitution is very specific. Unless there's emergency powers, it doesn't matter if we're declaring war or laying taxes. That is something that's supposed to be constructed out of the congressional body, not the presidency. I respect what President Trump's doing. I think it's going to have a great and positive impact. But we don't want the next president to do the same thing in a negative way. So we want to make sure that we have balanced government the way it was intended in the Constitution. That's good for everybody, and I think it's the way our country was designed.
Congressman Rick McCormick, thank you so much for your insights here.
My pleasure. Semper Fidelis.
U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer today testified to the Senate Finance Committee on President Trump's trade policy, in particular his tariff plan. NDD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on the story.
Nearly 50 countries have approached me personally to discuss the president's new policy and explore how to achieve reciprocity, and they've spoken with many members of the administration. Several of these countries, such as Argentina, Vietnam, India, and Israel, have suggested that they will reduce their tariffs and non-tariff barriers.
U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer told senators that the main objective of U.S. tariffs is to correct trade imbalances with other countries. Democratic Ranking Member Senator Ron Wyden announced this Tuesday that he will be submitting a bipartisan bill to curtail presidential powers on trade.
Under the privileged resolution that I am proposing, you can put it on a fast track and get a vote that you can force.
Senators pressed Trade Representative Greer on whether U.S. tariffs were being used as leverage on geopolitical negotiations, a notion that Democrats rejected and Republicans embraced.
The reaction to suggestions from today's hearing that the tariffs have to do more than with trade. They have to do with geopolitical competition with China. Do you get a sense of that?
Listen, if that was the case, the way you do this would you would build an alliance. What we've done is the opposite. We've spent the last 10 to 15 years, including under the first Trump administration, trying to urge people to think twice about their trading with China. What we've seen so far is Japan and South Korea have entered into new negotiations with China because suddenly they look like a more reliable partner than us.
Senator, do you think there's appropriate messaging from the administration on the fact that there might be many goals to these tariffs?
I would hope that with some of our allies that the goal would be fair trade. With China, is the goal fair trade? Probably not. With China, probably it's a complete strategic reset. So my guess is there's multiple goals. I mean, the president will speak to this. I mean, this is his policy.
Republican Senator Tom Tillis, who is seeking re-election in 2026, threw his support behind Trade Representative Greer, but warned that the American people are wary of the effects of a trade war.
Oh, I support Ambassador Greer. I think he's a great pick for USTR. And it may just be because they're operating at a level I don't understand yet. But the American people are going to have patience. They voted for the president. He won the popular vote.
But that patience will run dry if they start bearing the brunt.
And Senator, do you think that Republicans will support Senator Wyden's bill to claw back tariff powers from the president?
No, not. I don't think. Let's face it. Chair Wyden has political motivations behind it. People like me that would like to come up with clawing back authority that's been conveyed by many Congresses is something I'm open to, but not Wyden's approach.
U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer will testify before the House Ways and Means Committee this Wednesday to discuss the president's tariff plans and trade policy for 2025. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
A federal judge today ordering the White House to restore the Associated Press access to presidential events. The network has been blocked from entering the Oval Office, Air Force One, and other limited spaces since mid-February. A U.S. district judge's temporary order now bars the federal government from singling out a news outlet over its views, but the judge says the White House is still allowed to restrict media access in different situations. The lawsuit traces back to President Trump's executive order that officially renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. The Associated Press was blocked from entering key spaces after it refused to change the name of the location in its editorial guidelines. The ruling will not go into effect, though, until Sunday to give the Trump administration some time to appeal.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.